Now we're going to create a little sub down here to actually set things in motion. We're going to say public sub move toon. And we want to move in the direction, so we'll say direction as integer. And then we are going to input the toon x coordinate as an integer. Oops. And the toon y as an integer. And we're going to say if map, going to grab our map tile list here, and we want to know if the tile at toon x, which will be fired there, and we're actually going to be looking ahead of the toon. So when we move in a certain direction, if a tile is marked as blocked, we want to keep our guy from walking there. This creates environmental collision, so we're kind of taking care, killing two birds with one stone here. Let's say if that tile is blocked, or if it's not blocked, sorry, then allow it to move. So we'll say set our move direction equals direction, and toon moving equals true. Okay. So this basically makes it so it looks ahead, checks to see if it's blocked, and then fires the movement command. So we can then launch our movement cycle. Alright, what else do we want to do here? Yes, it's time to set up our handle input on our world screen. Let's go ahead and save our project there. So we want to go to our handle input sub here, and we can clear out this mybase.handle input, and we'll say if toon offset x equals 0 and toon offset y equals 0 and toon moving equals false, which then we'll be able to execute our handle input for our movement keys. So if you see what we're doing here, we're saying basically if it's 0, well, 0 means that it's in between its movement cycles. Remember, we said once the movement cycle is concluded, it resets our offset values back to 0. So that means we're between movement cycles, and also that our toon is not moving. Then it's ready to accept new inputs for movement, because we don't want him to accept input in the middle of his movement cycle. Otherwise, it's going to throw everything off. So I hope that makes sense. So if we're cleared for new input, we're going to say if input dot key down keys dot s. I like to use the WASD movement method. You could also set this up for your arrow keys if you wanted to. That's completely up to you. So if the player presses the S key, that's going to be our downward movement. We're going to say move toon. And what direction? 1. Toon X. Oops. And toon Y +1. So what you see, what we're doing here is moving in this direction, and we're looking ahead at the toon X, meaning that it's in the same X region or same line on the screen as our character is standing, but looking ahead of our character by one tile to check and see if it's blocked. And then, if that evaluates to true, it will move our character. And then we will set our last direction equals 1. And the reason we set this outside after we do this, even if this returns false, we want him to look like he's moving in that direction. Say we're walking parallel to a mountain that we can't walk through. And then we move into that mountain, or we attempt to. Our guy will not be able to move into it, but it'll show the last direction that we attempted to move, so he'll be facing the mountain. You see what I mean? Okay. So let's go ahead and set up our other input handles. So we'll say else if input can't type dot key down. This time I'm going to do keys W for my upward movement. I'm going to do the exact opposite of this. My movement direction in this case is going to be 4, because remember we set 4 to be our upward movement. And again, we're evaluating, we're going to be looking at the same row that we're on, but we want to look below our character. I'm sorry, above our character, toward the top of the screen, which is always a negative. And set our last direction to 4, an upward facing direction. So then we're going to do the exact same thing, but instead of looking ahead or behind our Y values, we're going to be looking left and right. So we'll be using our X values. I'm just going to copy and paste that. Whoops. Let's try that again. We'll do our A key next. And our movement direction for left, I believe, was 2. So if I'm going left, then I want to look in the negative direction. We can get rid of this here because we are going to be looking on the same vertical position as the character is standing. Alright, and we will repeat that for our final direction, which is D, or right arrow key, and you can use both at the same time as well if you want. 3, and we want to look at toon +1 and toon Y, or toon X +1. And finally, we're going to say else move direction equals 0. So 0 is no movement, right? We don't have a 0 movement. What that will do is set our guy back to movement 0, and it's just going to say last direction equals the direction that was pressed. So even if he didn't move, it'll set that direction. Okay.